Buongiorno. Today I'm coming to you from Italy, and I am kind of on the fly making the YouTube video for this week. So I thought I would do a little watercolor sketch because I have been doing watercolor sketches. Okay, good morning, buongiorno. Let's get started with a simple watercolor sketch inspired by Tuscany. So the first thing that you need to have for this project is a cup of cappuccino. This is really important so that you can get into the Italian mindset. The next thing that I have been using all week since I've been here, this is my Koi watercolor set. It's really nice because it's portable. It has the tray that comes out and clicks onto the side. So you can mix in both places, 3 places, and it's portable and packable, really small for on the go and in your luggage. So this is the Koi set. I really like this set. I have a spray bottle that I spritz down to get the colors wet rather than any other way. I like it like with the spritz bottle. And I have this set of brushes. I'm not sure the name. I'm going to list all the supplies down below, but this is a nice travel set of brushes. It comes in a nice little leather case, and the brushes are protected by being in these metal containers, which also flip and work as a long handle. So the brushes, the bristles are really nice, and it comes with 3 sizes, and it's a real nice travel set. So the one I use the most is the large one. And then there's a medium and a small. So on this project, I'm going to be using the large one and the small one. I also use a mechanical pencil so I don't have to worry about sharpening. I've got some disposable Bic ones that I use, but I also do like my Alvin sort of heavy drafting pencil. It's real nice quality, but in the interest of traveling light, I just grabbed a couple of these disposable Bic. And then you're going to want to have a permanent, fade-proof, waterproof, fine line pen. So these come in all kinds of different brands. Here's one that's a Staedtler pigment liner. It's a 0.2 though. That's too fine for me. Here's one that's a Micron. That's a 0.8. That's a little heavy for me, but I do like it. What I really prefer in the Micron is the 0.5. Here's a Copic multi-liner. It's a 0.3. What's neat about this one is it's gray. The marker is gray, so it sort of emulates pencil. It's not quite so as heavy as a black line. But the one that I'm going to be using today is a basic Uniball. And this is what I'm using because my 0.5 of the Micron ran out of ink on this trip. I used it so much. So my preferred pen would be the Micron 0.5. Okay. So a little cappuccino. The other thing that I'm using for all of my watercolor sketches that I'm doing here in Italy, because I'm sending them home, I got some vintage Italian postage stamps, and I've been picking one stamp and adhering it into each sketch, kind of tucking it into the sketch someplace, so it's got a little bit of Italy flair in that. And I think I got those either on eBay or Etsy. So I've got a photograph that I'm looking at off to the side, and it is our villa and down the end of the street where the students stay when we bring them here for the workshop. Oh, the other thing that you want to have is a kneaded rubber eraser. The kneaded rubber eraser is really nice because it doesn't make any crumbs and it doesn't leave any marks, and it really works nicely on this watercolor paper. And speaking of which, I'm using Arches hot pressed 7 by 10 inch block. It's really nice surface, and I think this, let's see how many sheets are in this. There's 20 sheets in here, so it's a nice to work on. It's a block, so if you're not familiar with that, it's gummed on all 4 sides with one little space right here that you slide a knife in to peel it off the block. But this holds it flat while you're painting. It's not going to curl up, and it dries flat. You leave it on the block until it dries, and then you slide a knife right in here and you just peel it off the edges as a finished sheet. So that works out really well. Okay, let's get started. So I'm gonna start with the pencil sketch, and I'm gonna start with the horizon up here. I've got sort of a down turn here, comes over here, then it dips down because there's gonna be a road that's gonna come in there. So it dips down and then it dips back up and comes over here. So this is the dip for the road. It's gonna sort of come down and get wide at the end. So we're looking at our villa at the end of the road. So I like to make the road come a little wiggly, but gets wide. So it's the point of focus and you feel like you could come into this scene. So we've got a little villa kind of down in the back here. So sort of a traditional Italian villa. It's just gonna be square with the roof, the red roof, and it'll be that sort of off yellow stone color. And it'll have a couple little windows. And that's all the detail that I'm gonna put in that villa. I'll probably give it a couple little red shutters on the sides of the windows, and then a window right here. And that's just gonna be my little building. Then you have to have the cypress trees. So let's make this go here. No, let's leave that going down. So we're gonna have a little shrub in front of there, and then it's gonna come downhill, and then we're gonna have this come down again from there. Maybe it comes along the front. And here, we wanna keep this sketchy, so let's not get too particular. So we're gonna have the cypress tree right here. That's the pointed tree, and then let's put like an oak tree. So there's a lot of big oak trees around here. So we'll give that a big oak tree that sits next to the villa right here. And then sort of along the horizon line, some lower brush. And then I'm gonna add in a couple more of those quintessential Italian cypress trees. And they generally have them in sort of groupings. So we'll put these here. Let's make one a little shorter so they're not all the same height. And then we're gonna come along here, and then we're gonna have another slightly smaller oak tree. So these are very basic, simple shapes, and I'm trying to keep it sketchy. Maybe there's a little fence out here. And then we're gonna come down into the dip of the road. And then we're gonna have some greenery here that's gonna go down sort of into the road so that it looks like the road's going down the hill, and the greenery kind of comes in and the road's gonna take a dip down there. And we're gonna have a little bit more of that, and then another Italian cypress tree over here. And then a little more on the horizon. Now, a little more cappuccino. On this side of the road, there are grapevines. So they grow in rows. So I'm gonna angle the rows like this. I'm gonna give myself 3 rows of grapevines, and they're just gonna be wiggly sort of shapes with they're gonna follow along the line. I'm drawing the lines first so I can get them in the right angle, and I'm gonna start sort of small, but as they come forward, they're gonna get a little bigger because they're gonna be closer to us. So I'm just drawing them sort of as loose puffs, but they're getting bigger as they get closer. And then I'm gonna follow that. We actually probably could put these a little closer together, and then we could get maybe one more. Now it's hard to see the lines, so let's erase. So we're gonna start small, wiggling along. We're kind of got like we don't see the stems or the stalks of them because we're looking straight down the line. So, and then this is getting a little close. Again, this is a watercolor sketch. It's not like a finished watercolor painting. This is something that you would do quickly, maybe in a cafe, or maybe on site, or maybe in your studio, but it's meant to be quick, capturing sort of the essence of the place. Okay, so here's our horizon. So we can get one more row here that just goes off the page. And I wanna make sure this is a little bigger in the front, but still loose. Then I wanna put some poppies along the road here. So I'm just gonna draw myself some sketchy sort of lines, leaves, and then I'm gonna draw a bunch of little circles that will be my poppies, and maybe in the front There's a couple that have a little bit more detail of a poppy shape, but for the most part, we're just gonna do different size circles. And then the edge of the road is gonna be a little sketchy, and maybe there's a few more poppies as we go down. And again, they're gonna get smaller as they go further in the distance, so they're gonna be even less detailed, and maybe just a few scratchy marks with a couple of red dots. So now on this side, we've got sort of an embankment here, so I'm gonna draw an edge on this. And then I'm gonna put a little fence on the edge so I can do some fence posts and have that kind of disappear. That gives us another sense of perspective. So they're gonna get smaller as they go back and a little bit bigger towards the front. And then I'm gonna put poppies in this front edge as well. So the same thing, loose lines, sort of a few maybe more defined shapes, loosely defined shapes in the foreground, and then mostly circles for the poppies. And then we're gonna have a little bit of rough edge. And then we want to, we'll come up with some lines here to sort of suggest that embankment. And then I've got two grooves. This is a dirt road. So I'm gonna bring sort of two lines down here. So here's one line that's gonna be like the tire lines, and then the second line. And that's gonna follow the shape of the road. So we're gonna have some sort of cross-hatching stuff going on in the middle of those two lines, and then we're gonna come out this way. So these are sort of the tire tracks, the path of the dirt road, keeping it loose, okay? So then over here, that is kind of plain, so I'm just gonna give it sort of another layer line of character. So I'm gonna come down the hill like this, and Tuscany style, I'm gonna put some little trees along the edge of that field to divide it from the one behind it. Not a lot of detail, just a little scribbling trees along that line. Then maybe the yard comes this way, and down here, there's gonna be some bushes in front of the house, and they're gonna also follow down this line of that cypress tree right here. And then maybe there's another little oak tree kind of back here. Okay. So that's basically our loose sketch. So the next step after the pencil is to take the whatever fine black liner of your choice, and we're gonna start inking it in, and a little cappuccino. So inking it in basically means just reinforcing your pencil lines, but so that we don't have lines coming through. For example, I don't really want this line of the horizon coming through my tree. I'm gonna try and keep in mind that the things in the front need to be inked first. And I'm gonna give that cypress tree sort of a rough edge, and that's gonna be in the front. And then I'm gonna put the oak tree behind it and not put the line through it. And that's because watercolor is transparent. So it's not gonna cover up these lines. It's going to leave these lines even if we paint on top. So we need to make sure that we don't have overlapping drawing. So you want to keep the things in the front without lines going through them. So I'm going to bring the bushes in the front of the bottom of this house. I'm not going to draw the bottom of the house. I'm going to put the bushes right in the front. And then that way, we don't have any lines going through. So I'm gonna keep these windows loose. I'm not gonna worry about making them perfectly square. I'm just suggesting windows and shutters. And then I'm gonna make this oak tree go behind the house and give it its trunk. And I give a little bit of line quality, suggesting the branches. And again, the cypress are rough on the edge. So you can choose to do that, or you can keep them straight. A lot of times they're rendered really smooth, but they only look really smooth like that if they're trimmed. When they're not being trimmed, they're rough on the edges. They're only manicured and trimmed like that, sort of in some circumstances. Okay, so we're gonna have a little foreground here that the trees are lining up on, and then there's bushes in the back, and here's another oak tree. And that comes down and meets this horizon line, and then there's that little fence back there, and then the embankment that comes down. So the edge of the road, we want to keep a rough line because that's not going to be smooth where the grass meets the road. So I'm going to make a scratchy line. I'm going to indicate my poppies. I'm not going to draw this line through here because my poppies are overlapping that edge. So I'm keeping them simple to just circles. And I'm just going to keep re-inking my drawing this way. Now I'm going to take my eraser and take out all the pencil. And you want to make sure you do get all the pencil out right now, because once you paint watercolor over the pencil, it will not erase. And then here I'm going to see that I missed sort of a few lines. So you'll see anything you missed, you can add that back in, and you want to make sure you get all that pencil out, because again, the watercolor will seal it and you won't be able to erase it after you paint. So the idea is to keep this as loose as the drawing and a little more cappuccino. I've also got a cup of water off to the side, and I like to use a little square of these kitchen sponges to wipe my brush off on. So I'll set that somewhere off to the side here. And when I want to get excess water out of my brush after cleaning in the water, I'm going to brush it off onto this little kitchen sponge. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay in some sky. So I'm going to grab some light blue. And I'm going to add a little black to that to gray it down a little bit so it's not so intense. And then I'm going to lay in just a little bit of color here in the sky. Then I'm going to mix up that Tuscany color that we're all so familiar with, of the sort of the yellow fields of grain and in the summer. So I'm going to be mixing some yellows, but I'm also going to neutralize it with a little bit of ochre and tone it down a little bit so it's not super bright yellow. And that is what I'm going to lay in back here. I'm using the big brush. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add some green. I've already got some green mixed up here, but I want to keep it not super vibrant green. So I'm not using direct colors from the box. I'm always going to add a little something, a little blue, a little brown, a little something to make my color a little more interesting than directly out of the box. So here I'm adding a little bit of brown to the green so it's not quite so vibrant. And now the edge of the embankment here, I'm going to make that a little darker. And I'm going to take my small brush and put a few little sort of splattery dots, sort of to suggest that dirt road texture. I'm not going to go too far back with that because that's detail that you would only see in the foreground. Okay, so now we're going to put the sort of the golden brown color of the dirt down in between the grapevines. I'm gonna make my oak trees a little bit dark. Just dabbing color. And you can see I'm leaving the white of the paper showing through a lot here. I'm not making it solid color. That's important. It gives it sort of a feeling of sketch and a feeling, gives it some light. So now I'm going to take a little purple and use that for some of my faraway greenery. A little artistic license with the purple. So now I'm going to take this smaller brush and come back and add the poppies. I'm waiting for this to dry so that if I put the poppies in it while the green is wet, the red is going to run everywhere. So I'm waiting for that to dry. Just like I did with this tree, I waited for the oak tree to dry on the outside edges so they don't run together. And here I'm just going to take my small brush and add some small poppies. I'm going to use red and I'm going to use a little orange so I have light and dark. And with the same brush, I'm going to add some dark blue mixed with a little black. For my windows now that the house is dry. Then I'm going to add those tile lines in the roof, real loose. And the shutters, just little indications of the shutters next to the windows. And then I'm going to come back with a little bit of dark green along here, along that embankment, and here for a little depth in the poppies on this side. Again, I'm using the real small brush. And when I'm done painting and it dries, I typically come back with the pen and add a little more detail and line work. So I'll thicken up some of my lines. So here along the road, I'm gonna just go over that to make it a little bit thicker line in some places. And you have to be careful that you wait for the watercolor to dry because the moisture of the water will stop your pen. So I like to do some dot work like I did down here with the brush, also with the pen, to give it that dirt road kind of a feeling. And I also do a little shading with cross hatching, so I make some lines in the dark areas. I don't want to get too busy in these grape rows because that's not my focus. My focus is kind of the road. But I'm gonna come in here and sort of reinforce the fence a little bit. Not too much, I don't want to get too much detail, but I'm gonna come in here and do a little more texture on top of my cypress trees. And a little cross hatching in here. But not too much detail. I don't want to do much more than I have, but I do want to thicken up just some of the lines so we have some thick and some thin in my line quality. Last but not least, I'll sign it right down here in an open area. And I'll choose a stamp to include. I try to pick a stamp that sort of goes with the color so it's not quite so obvious. So we could use a green one. Or we could use this one. This is kind of light. I don't want to put it right in the middle of the road though, but maybe it would look good up in here because it's got the yellow on it. Or the brown. I think it's either going to be that or the green. I think I like that. So then what I'm going to do is I put a little gel medium. You could use a glue stick or whatever kind of glue you have, because these stamps have been steamed off the envelope. So I put a little bit of gel medium. I make sure I get it out to all the corners. And I'm going to put that sort of right in this area up here. And I want to be mindful not to put my signature or this stamp in too close to the edge, where if someone were to frame this sketch, it would end up in the frame. So now what I'm going to do to make this seem even a little bit more integrated is I'm going to bring my line here across the stamp, and I'm going to bring a little bit of this above the stamp. So now it looks like, rather than being just stuck on, it's sort of integrated into the design. So, you know, it's not about too much detail, and you need to resist the temptation to be too detailed. But here is the Tuscan dirt road with the villa in the distance watercolor sketch. All the supplies that you need, all the supplies that I've used are going to be linked down below the video in the information box. And buon giornata. Have a good day.